Hey everybody, Mr. Regan here, and today we're going to be looking at how to create the first part of your report that you're going to be submitting to Dr. Gonzalez about kind of what's going on with our space station and our pod up there in space. We're going to break down not only this slideshow, but kind of how you're going to be working within our Amplify page. And then you will be completing a survey here to kind of point out, like, do we truly understand how to use the tools that we're about to explain? And do we know what to put in there? Obviously, if you ever put your X in those bottom two rows, please make sure you reach out to me. You can connect with me, obviously, by dragging up your resource bar here and using the resource links there to connect with me however you need to get the help with this part. So let's go ahead and dive into how you're going to be creating your report for Dr. Gonzalez. Now, we are actually going to be focusing on the first part of your report to Dr. Gonzalez. So let's take a look at what that's all about. In your first part of your report, you're going to be explaining those missing seconds that we had when our ground team was watching the approach of our space pod and what was going on in that instance. Now, we are going to be answering this big question: what happened that caused the pod to collide with the space station? Now, I know it's kind of been a while since we've talked about claims and that sort of thing. But if you remember, we talked about how claim 2 was probably the most logical claim for what was happening up in space, that the thrusters only slowed the pod, it didn't stop them. And then the pod hit the station, which made it bounce back and move in the opposite direction. So we're really going to focus on explaining what happened to cause the pod to collide with the station in the first place, okay? And we're going to be creating a scientific argument here in order to explain it. Now, if you remember, we've talked about how to write a scientific argument. I know it's been a while. So we have our big question: what caused our pod to collide with our space station? And our claim, obviously, is claim number 2. The thruster slowed it, so it didn't actually stop. It then ended up hitting the space station, colliding, and moving in the opposite direction. So we have our question, we have our claim. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using evidence that's given to us and then writing a reasoning to explain how these two connect. Now, if you remember, the reasoning section is that link between the claim and the evidence, almost like the missing link, the thing we need to say to explain why the claim matters with the evidence. So we're going to be using this reasoning tool inside of Amplify to do just that, to kind of connect our evidence that we're going to be given with our claim. And you guys are going to be writing that missing link, that reasoning section as to how does the evidence support the claim, okay? So let's go ahead and look at the evidence that you're going to be using. You have two pieces of evidence. Evidence A: the thruster force was the same strength as the other missions, and it was exerted in the opposite direction. So we're focusing on this idea of the thruster force and what was going on in our mission compared to a normal mission. So that's evidence A. Evidence B is the pod mass was 1,100 kilograms, which is 130 kilograms more than what it usually is. That was that information that Dr. Gonzalez gave us in that email. So our job is to write a reasoning section in the middle here that explains how our evidence is that missing link to explaining what's going on with the claim or why this occurred with our claim. So your job, you can use the sentence starters up here. Okay, this matters because, to begin your writing, and you can then explain why this matters. Why does evidence A matter when supporting this claim? Okay, so why is it important to know about that thruster strength in order to prove there was that crash between our space station when that image went out? And then for evidence B, why does it matter that the pod's mass was 13 kilograms over the usual amount when explaining that crash with our space pod, okay? So when you get into your slideshow, you'll go into the Amplify page. You're going to see this exact page here without all the images. So don't be afraid to kind of go back to this video if you need to help you write it, okay? But when you're done, you'll click the hand in button in the bottom corner, and that will be how you kind of end that activity. If you have questions, reach out to me. Otherwise, good luck.